You know, earlier this year, the author of a classic comedy series from the 90s said something interesting about isekai anime. We're talking about Usagi Nakamura, the author of Gokido-kun Minoki. She talked about the mass production of stories where people suddenly get amazing abilities, become popular with girls, and end up in a harem. And she wonders if people are not ashamed of writing the same kind of novels. Now, what she said is not hard to understand. Everyone agrees. For the most part, the isekai anime genre is full of the same kind of formulaic stories about a self-insert overpowered MC who gets a harem of beautiful girls. However, she is explicitly talking about the kind of stories that use the same generic formula and not about the idea of isekai anime itself. Of course, in the past few years, there has been a lot of stigma around the isekai anime genre, which is understandable. Most of them are not good. But is it really the end of this genre? Is it really the downfall? That is the question. Right now, we're in fall 2023 season of anime, and the most successful anime of the season is Frieren Beyond Journey's End. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that this anime is not an isekai. It falls under the fantasy banter, and anyone who has watched an episode or two of the series would agree that this is peak fantasy anime. The ingenuity, direction, animation production, premise, and most importantly, the characters. It is all meticulously well done, and there's a reason why it is currently the top rated on my anime list. Yes, I know ratings aren't everything, but they do show the community's love and respect for the story. It has been so long since we last had a proper fantasy anime. The fantasy genre itself fell victim to the isekai trend. Every season, you get a handful of same generic isekai with slightly different toppings, but ultimately the same formula. Seriously, it's the same thing. A shut-in loser, a social failure, or sometimes a corporate slave who is isekai to a fantasy world. He is also broken and overpowered in one way or another. He gets to be a hero or a savior of some sort because the locals aren't nearly as broken as him. Of course, all the girls, doesn't even matter if he's human or not. She falls for the guy. It doesn't even matter if he had zero riz back in the old life. The girls of this world would still fall in love with him. And why do all of the MCs look the same? This is the plot of the anime that people refer to us as isekai trash. And since all these stories take place in a fantasy world, they also have been ruined the fantasy genre as a whole. But it does make sense though, because most of these generic isekai trash have self-insert protagonists. They are intended to be viewed by your average low self-esteem lazy loser. It's all about wish fulfillment. The protagonist's circumstances are relatable in the sense that he was a corporate slave, a neat, a lonely guy, a loser, or in some cases, it's not even that. The protagonist is just an average guy breezing through life without any aim or purpose. Exactly. It's all about wish fulfillment, but because there is an actual market for that, always has been, the isekai generic trash continues to be produced every single season. Keep in mind that not everybody who watches these shows is a loser, because some people just like relaxing watching generic shows. But it's also true that these shows aren't going to get respect from the audience. Only good stories get respect from the masses. The reason Frieren has gotten so much love and respect is because it is genuinely a masterful work of fiction. You can't say the same about many other fantasy anime, and you definitely can't say the same about most of the isekai anime out there. I mean, do you know that most of the seasonal isekai trash is produced from literal shitpost? After Mushoku Tensei in 2012, many people started publishing their own web novels, and they'd always use a catchy headline because without that, it's hard to get traction. This is why you have an isekai anime nowadays with weirdly long titles like A Saint Who Has Been Summoned to Another World Cries, "My boyfriend is dead and won't work for me. By the way, that dead boyfriend was me in my previous life." Holy Jesus, yeah, that is a web novel. The web novels that became popular were adapted into light novels, which then started getting anime adaptations after the modern day isekai boom. Though now that I've mentioned Mushoku Tensei, let's talk about that. Believe it or not, this story, the light novel I mean, is talked about as the father modern day isekai. It's a bit weird how we didn't get an animated adaptation until 2021, because even if you don't agree, that is the father of modern day isekai. It is still one of the pioneers. It also has a brilliant story, to be honest, and deserves all the recognition it has gotten. The protagonist starts off as a morally depraved piece of trash, but we aren't supposed to like him at all. The story isn't just a feel-good fantasy. There are actual stakes, proper world building, and an overall authentic narrative that takes place and spans over multiple sagas, which chronicle the protagonist's entire life since reincarnation. It's brilliant, and there is a reason why all the generic isekai anime cliches originate from this anime. By the way, ReZero's web novel came out in 2012 as well. Of course, it is the pinnacle of isekai anime, and part of that reason ReZero is so unapologetically good is because it never makes things easy for the protagonist, which is the exact problem with your average isekai. The fantasy world is literally handed over to them. No struggle whatsoever, even though in my opinion, it's only worth it if you work for it. But it's not not like every MC has to struggle like Subaru for it to be a good story. Overlord, No Game No Life, Reincarnating as a Slime are all phenomenal stories even with overpowered MCs, although Tanya the Evil would disagree. Though just recently, a series called Eminence in Shadow was adapted into an anime, and it is unapologetically so shamelessly edgy that you can't help but to love it. Which brings me to the second point of this video. What is the future of isekai anime? The thing is, the isekai genre has plenty of genuinely good stories to tell. The idea of starting a new life in the fantasy world just can't get old, but what can get old is mediocrity. Just like how the battle shonen anime genre has evolved recently, we're gonna see the similar developments with the isekai genre. But why? Aren't we talking about the downfall of isekai anime? Yes, but the thing is, we've already seen and experienced the downfall of isekai anime. Most anime fans are more or less frustrated with the stupid number of isekai trash that have been overcrowded in the anime medium in the past decade. But I'm optimistic because the isekai anime we've seen recently are kind of different. How so, you ask? Well, there is still just as much mediocrity, but these anime have started playing around with the premise a little bit more. Like, did you see the one where the MC is reborn as a vending machine? That shit is stupid, but it's kind of funny. Deathbound Deathplay was interesting too, though to be fair, reverse isekai have an advantage over traditional isekai because at least the modern setting isn't as convenient as the same old world where they literally 90% of all isekai anime take place. This is another problem. We need more variety. Not every isekai has to feature in a medieval fantasy world. Take the saga of Tanya Evil for example. It takes place in an alternate reality Europe and it's super fire. See, this is the problem. The potential is insane, but then we keep getting the same kind of isekai trash that is what pisses you off. People make fun of battle shonen anime too, but whether it's My Hero Academia or Black Clover, or let's say Fire Force, at least they don't take place in the same setting. Another anime that is popular this season is Shangri-La Frontier. It's not technically an isekai because the main character doesn't actually reincarnate, but the premise is badass. It's a colorful and vibrant anime adaptation that cares more about action than any usual cliches. As I said, it's badass. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if it turns out well or not. We just need anime studios to play around more when it comes to the isekai genre. Just stop doing the same thing. With that said, let's take a look at a couple isekai anime that are scheduled to come out next year and see if we're on the right track or not. There are a few of them, like Tales of Wedding Rings, which is about a protagonist that has to gather more wedding rings, stack up wives, and bond with each of them because the fate of the world rests on his ability to marry women. But the anime that intrigues me the most is no longer allowed in another world. Imagine Osamu Dazai, the legendary novelist and author, finds himself yanked out of the world of the 1940s and straight to the isekai land. I don't know, that sounds similar to the premise of Drifters, so let's see where this one takes us. Some isekai that have come out in the past couple years that definitely succeeded in differentiating themselves from the herd include stories like The Uncle from Another World. That anime was as real as it gets. Rather than showing how easy life would be if you were overpowered protagonist in the fantasy world, this one shows us the brutal reality. Sunny Boy by Studio Madhouse, on the other hand, was an isekai that took in students in a different dimension. Of course, there is also Mushoku Tensei and Eminence in Shadow, not to mention all the sequels we'd be getting, but when you look at the genre as a whole, there's still not enough ingenuity in comparison to the mediocrity. I'm hopeful though. The modern day isekai genre that started with Sword Art Online still hasn't actually matured. It's still in the beginning stage, but because the isekai theme has so much potential, I'm optimistic about the future of this genre. Like previously, it was just about self-insert harem MCs with a few gems in between, but now you also have villainous anime, female leads, and a whole bunch of other crazy premises. The mediocrity is still there, but just like how the fantasy genre finally decided to adapt Frieren Beyond Journey's End, the isekai subgenre would also soon adapt another masterpiece. But enough about what I think, guys. What do you think? Do you agree that the isekai anime genre is brimming with mediocrity, or do you disagree? Also, what is your favorite isekai anime? I actually want to know. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching the video. If you did enjoy it, please click the like button. Also, if you want to stick around to see more of my content, hit the subscribe button. I try to post every week.